Welcome to the OneTake podcast, where we review new movies, old movies, and talk about stuff every week, starting now. Right?
Yeah.
We're committed now.
Now.
This week we're talking about Scream 5, which is really just called Scream. I'm Gil, here with my brothers Adam
I'm Adam.
and Alon.
Hello.
So let's start with our overall kind of spoiler-free thoughts. Unless one of you is itching to talk about it, I'll go first. All right. Well, anyway, I thought I thought it was a solid entry in the franchise, probably the best one since the original, or at least Scream 2. And I guess we should say up front, you've both probably seen Scream, but have very little memory of it.
Right.
I'm probably the only one here who has seen all four of them.
I probably have a better memory of Scary Movie than I do of Scream.
Yeah,
Scream
that's
movies.
probably true. Which I've never seen Scary Movie, by the way.
Yeah.
Really?
And the original title of Scream was Scary Movie.
Really?
Huh.
Yeah, when it was first being written, they were calling it Scary Movie, and they ended up calling it Scream.
It's a nice bit of trivia.
So, like I said, solid entry in the franchise, but it's hard to compete with that first one because that movie was, at least the first time I'd seen that kind of meta commentary, but done in that way where it wasn't a spoof. It was still a genuine entry in the horror genre, but was also kind of poking fun at all the horror tropes. Which is what I thought, Shaun of the Dead did so well a few years later.
Yeah.
So for me, this was like a Shaun of the Dead prototype. But it's hard, now 26 years later to recapture that lightning in a bottle. A few things have changed in the last 2 or 3 decades. The slasher genre really isn't that big anymore. So if you want to comment on horror today, it wouldn't really be the slasher genre that you're talking about. But you can't really get away from the fact that Scream is a slasher movie. So if you were going to comment on horror today, it would be more supernatural horror, zombies, that sort of thing.
Things you thought were dead but turned out not to be completely dead. That's like a big one.
Right, exactly. So Scream in a few ways is kind of stuck in the past.
Yeah.
So taking all that just as a fact that you can't really move beyond that, I thought it was a solid entry, but it can't compete with that novelty of the first one. And now, I will say it does comment a little bit on the fact that it is a requel, which I, to be honest, kind of hate that term. But whatever you want to call it, a sort of reboot.
Why do you hate the term?
I don't know, something about that requel.
Honestly, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know. It just sounds like millennial Gen Z.
So it's not
does.
actually
Yeah.
the concept. It's just you don't like how it sounds coming off the tongue.
Right. The way I've heard it referred to is as a legacy-quel, which doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well.
I do feel like he captures it better, though.
Right.
Well, isn't it the same idea of like a soft reboot? Kind of.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Do you think that term works better?
Yeah,
Soft
I
reboot?
guess I like the term soft reboot better because it sounds less like it's trying to sound like it's combining two words.
Yeah, I guess it's more honest of what it is. Like requel kind of, it almost like kind of tries to trick you into thinking you're going to get more of the OG cast and stuff. Like soft reboot, you pretty much know they're going to be a very minor part or not a part
If you
at all.
take the word requel, it's 90% sequel.
Yeah.
Whereas soft reboot, it's half reboot, half soft.
Yeah.
It's like
and you don't have the word sequel in there at all.
That's true. So the movie does bring up that it's a requel, which is something that didn't really exist. I mean, it existed, but it wasn't as in vogue when the original Scream came around. But that concept doesn't really play into the movie all that much, besides the fact that it is a requel, and they point it out. But if you go back to Scream 3, which is considered probably the worst one of the series, they bring up the rules of a trilogy. For example, they point out early on, this is the third one. And when you're doing the final entry in a trilogy, nobody's safe. Even the main character can die. It plays into the character's behavior and kind of the rules of the movie. Here, I didn't really feel like they did that all that much. And they point out it's a requel, but it's not like that alters their behavior. It kind of reminded me of Matrix Resurrections, where it gets a little bit meta and it says, hey, we're a reboot and we're acknowledging that, but we don't really have anything to say about that. We're kind of just pointing it out. And in a way, it lets you have your cake and eat it too, because you can play into all the reboot stuff.
Well,
You can go. You can bring back the old characters, bring in new characters. You can do all that and play into the trope, but you point it out, so it's like kind of okay.
Yeah, like with this, they point out it's a requel and all the rules of the requel, and they literally follow all the rules in this movie. You figure, like, since they know the rules, maybe it would cause a character to do something different or like break the rules of the requel.
Right,
but
right.
Nothing really unexpected happened.
Yeah.
I feel like
Exactly.
the main influence, the fact that it was self-referential and the fact that it was a requel, the main influence that it had was that it caused the main characters to start to suspect one another.
Right. So it did play into it a little bit. But I think for me, the bottom line was movie was a good time. It made me laugh. It made me feel tense.
It made you cry.
Sure, yeah. But what doesn't these days, right? So solid. Good movie. It didn't really reinvent anything. Didn't do anything particularly new. So it was fine. But going into it, I was wondering, what are they going to do different from the first one? And the answer was not really a whole lot was different. But it was just another good Scream movie. But what about you guys? What did you think? Adam.
I really enjoyed it. I think it's hard to watch this movie and not constantly try to guess what's going to happen next or who done it, etc. So to me, that was really fun. They didn't like get me with any jump scares, which I don't think was the point. Like the number of times that they had a door open and then you have to wonder whether or not there's going to be something behind it when the door closes, whether it's a fridge door or an actual door. It was pretty unique as far as it wasn't exactly a horror movie. It was pretty unique in terms of being specifically a slasher, which I enjoyed, especially because I haven't seen that many of those before. Like
right.
I haven't. The last time I saw a full Scream movie was probably over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, with all the doors like opening, like the whole point was they were making fun of that trope.
Yeah. So I enjoyed my favorite part was just trying to predict what would happen next, and every once in a while getting surprised.
Right. Alon, what about you?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It didn't blow me away, but it was pretty solid as far as meta movies go. They probably did it better than some other movies out there.
Matrix.
Oh yeah. That's the one.
We'll subtly mention the one that I explicitly mentioned like 4 minutes ago.
I wasn't listening.
Good. So this will be a repeat of actually seeing the movie.
To be fair, I was listening. I just forgot.
Yeah. Alon, I'll just mention it that you were. This comes up every time we record. At least one of us has to be horribly sleep deprived when we see the movie. This time it was Alon. And I think you did actually fall asleep at a couple points.
Yeah, not for long. Like I still remembered everything important that happened in the movie.
Earlier today, I quizzed Alon on the movie to make sure he remembered enough of it that it was fair for him to participate. But don't worry, me and Adam, we both were awake, fully conscious, I would say.
As conscious as I can be.
Listen,
yeah, there you go.
I still enjoyed the movie, and it was a good movie. I liked it.
Okay, well. All right, that's the end of the spoiler-free section. And now, let's walk through the movie.
Do you think that was enough for people who haven't seen it to determine whether or not they should watch it?
I mean, do you do that?
It's like, well, one out of 3 people here fell asleep during it. Well, so you should go and see it.
But that had nothing to do with the movie.
No, it actually was. I would say it was worth watching. Look, I have a pretty high standard.
Yeah.
You know that, like, when there's like a new movie or a new TV show out, I often let you two watch it before me because I had my heart broken so badly by Game of Thrones.
He hasn't even seen Shang-Chi yet.
Yeah. So I don't want to relive that pain. So I let other people watch stuff, and I'm like, I'll just see what the reactions are, and if it's anything less than great, I'm not going to bother.
Well, that doesn't really work with TV shows. You'd have to wait for the entire season. Actually, if it's like Game of Thrones, you'd have to wait for the entire series.
I know. But my point is, like, as someone who's very discriminating,
right?
I liked it. It was worth watching.
Are you sure you want to describe yourself that way?
I mean that purely in the most technical possible way.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with current cultural or socio-political context.
Right, so I already know my first edit of the episode.
My point is, it's hard to get me to be excited about a movie.
Yeah.
I'm fairly pessimistic when it comes to a lot of the things that comes out these days. But I liked it. I enjoyed it. I would recommend people watch it.
Right. Which you already said, except that now that Alon has been like, oh no, who brought this up?
What?
Would this be enough for somebody to listen and know if we recommend it or not?
I think I said
He
that.
said it.
Oh, okay. It sounds like you're arguing with yourself. You're
No,
like,
no,
yeah, it
I'm
was
just
good.
reassuring
I
people.
recommend it.
Yeah,
It's-
it was
it's a
good. It was
movie.
good. What do people think of this? No, I'm saying it was good.
Listen,
Yeah.
Look, how good could it really have been, though?
It's just a movie
Listen,
at the end of the day.
It's not going to change your
today's
life.
society, there are not many good movies. Most movies are terrible. This is one of the few good movies.
Yeah.
You should go see it.
In an
yeah.
ideal world, this would be the worst movie we see all year.
Right. Agreed. That's a good point.
All right, well, let's jump into the movie. It starts out with Tara Carpenter getting a call from a killer who questions her about the Stab franchise,
Yeah.
which I don't know if you picked up on this. Stab.
Yes.
It's
Scream.
basically
It's
Scream. Yeah. That started, I think, in the second Scream movie. And then in Scream 4, they really played into it because the movie starts and then it zooms out and you realize you were actually watching Stab. And if I recall correctly, it happens again where it's like waking up from a dream and then waking up again. You keep realizing you're watching the movie within the movie.
That's like every night of sleep that you have.
Lately, yeah. Oh, no, my video got demonetized.
Yeah.
I wake up. No, it didn't. And basically, Tara Carpenter gets the call, and she's questioned about the Stab movies. Get these questions right, or Amber dies. And then she gets the question, who was the killer in the first movie? She says Billy Loomis. Turns out she was wrong, because it was Billy Loomis and Stu, which is a callback to the original Scream movie, where I always forget her name. Who was the famous actress in the opening scene of that movie? Drew Barrymore.
Drew Barrymore.
She gets the call, and the question was, who was the killer in the original Friday the 13th? What's the answer?
Jason Voorhees' mother.
Exactly. See, she said Jason.
Yeah.
And she was just like Tara, being like, I know the answer to this, you idiot. It's Jason. And he's like, ha, no, it's Jason's mom.
Now who's an idiot?
Exactly. So it was very similar. And then he attacks her, and I thought that she was for sure dead, stabs her a bunch of times. Turns out she lived.
I knew she would live.
How did you know?
I just called it.
Because I saw the trailer and
I had,
saw the scenes.
I had a feeling because I didn't think they were going to literally recreate it exactly the same.
Yeah. And then we do find out later the reason that he let her live is so it would lure Sam back into town, her older sister.
I mean, how could he know she would live, though? The amount of times he stabbed her.
Here's one thing. The people who do the stabbing
Yeah.
seem to really like stabbing. Like the way they do it, it's so vigorous and fast.
Oh, yeah.
Like they seem to really enjoy
But
it.
most movies, when someone gets stabbed, it's like,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in this movie, you're
like,
basically
A lot of rapid.
you're punching somebody with a knife.
Yeah.
basically. You feel the stabs in Scream movies more than any other movie I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought the opening was good. It was in keeping with Scream movies, but cleverly, it also catches you up if you haven't seen Scream in 10 years or if you've never seen it.
Yeah.
Because they emphasize several times throughout this movie, there's always two killers. It wasn't just Billy. It was Stu. And they kind of remind you all this stuff in a very organic way, I thought. I also thought it was funny when he asks her what her favorite horror movies are. And a few times in this movie, it comes up where they're like Babadook, Witch, Hereditary.
It Follows.
Oh, they mentioned It
they
Follows.
mentioned
Yeah.
that.
Those are like the elevated horror movies. And it reminded me of a scene in Family Guy where you see Peter Griffin watching a TV and he's being hypnotized. And he's like, Breaking Bad is the greatest TV series of all time, except for maybe The Wire. And it is like, if you're a film buff and someone's like, what are your favorite recent horror movies? It's like, well, I liked Hereditary, It Follows, Babadook. Those are just the standard good horror movies of our time. It made me feel like a poser. So the next time someone asks me my favorite horror movies, I'm just going to try to find some like really unknown independent movies I can mention.
It was the Many Keys of Dr. Caligari, or what was that one with all the you know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
The
I
piano.
do. The one that brought up on Tell 'em Steve
Yeah,
Dave. Yeah. But yeah, anything else to say about the kind of cold open to this movie?
I liked it. I thought it felt very modern. they incorporated like smartphones and stuff in a way that just made it feel like it was taking place in today's day and age.
Right, where she kept trying to lock the door with her smartphone and he kept unlocking it.
Like she was doing all the same things I would do in that situation, short maybe of calling the police.
Right.
Well, but that doesn't seem to do anything
I
anyway.
thought she pressed some button in that app. Some
It's
emergency.
possible. I may have missed that.
Yeah.
Oh, she might have. Yeah. Didn't help her though.
But I liked it. I think it set the context and setting well.
Yeah, Ghostface likes to wait till the cops are there before he bounces. He or she bounces.
Wait, by the way, before you saw this movie, if I had asked you what is the name of
I
the
wouldn't
killer,
have known. I didn't
what would
know.
you have said? You wouldn't have even known.
Screen guy.
Are you saying Ghostface?
Well, so a lot of people.
I forgot that.
Like
I mean,
once I heard the term Ghostface, I was like, right, I have heard that before, but it wasn't fresh in my mind.
Well, it was trending on Twitter that a lot of people were like, I thought his name was Scream. One thing the opening reminded me of when Tara sort of tussles with Ghostface. One thing I've always liked about the Scream movies is that unlike traditional slasher movies like Friday the 13th or Halloween, where the bad guy is this invulnerable monster, it always feels like you could kill Ghostface.
Yeah.
Like he gets hit, he gets knocked down, he grunts. So
I mean, he's pretty sloppy. Like he's always like the way he runs around, like around tables.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Like
Well,
he feels human.
So much of
Exactly.
the action happens inside of normal indoor spaces that we're used to in our everyday lives, as opposed to like some kind of like mysterious cabin or some like abandoned building or something.
Crystal
it's
Lake.
Like, it's happening like in a like one of the most iconic scenes of Scream is inside of a kitchen.
Right, exactly. And I think that helps build suspense because when it's totally hopeless, all you're doing is watching to see how creatively Jason will kill somebody. But in Scream, when it feels like you could get away, and sometimes they do get away, there's a lot more suspense.
Yeah, I mean, not that the movie is particularly scary, but in theory, it's kind of scarier knowing that the guy's just a normal guy and it could be one of your friends, you know, who's acting all friendly with you. Like, it's not just this supernatural creature.
I think that's how the whole phone call thing and the quiz about the movies helps. Is it's like this sounds like a normal guy on the phone,
Right.
who's just a little bit messed up in the head.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So after
Whereas like
that,
take the Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy, like
Right.
you can't even have a conversation with him.
believe me, I've tried.
Yeah, trust me.
Then we meet Tara's older sister, Sam, and her boyfriend, Richie. We find out that she ran away from home years ago, which made Tara feel abandoned. So the two of them are kind of not on great terms. But after hearing about the assault, Sam returns home. And then we meet Tara's friend group. So we've got Amber, kind of goth, I would say. You have Chad and Mindy, who are both Randy's niece and nephew. Randy was the guy in the first movie who was the one who was kind of the nerd who knew all the rules of horror movies. You know, you never say, I'll be right back. You never participate in coitus.
No
You
copulation.
don't do that. Exactly.
Don't go to the basement by yourself.
Right.
Kind of like what you said.
Kind of like what I said.
No pop.
No pop in the attic or the basement or anywhere really. And everybody, not all of them, but several of the characters have connections to characters from the Scream franchise. So, right, like we just said, Chad and Mindy, Randy's niece and nephew. Then you have Liv, Chad's girlfriend. Now, here's a fun fact. Liv's last name is Mackenzie. And in the first Scream movie, they make reference to the Mackenzies. So Casey Becker, which is who, what's her name again? The opening scene? Drew Barrymore. I always forget for some reason. But Drew Barrymore's character, her father tells his wife to drive down to the Mackenzies. So people are like, wait, is that Liv's family? I checked into this. I looked at the original screenplay for the first Scream movie, and in that script, the Mackenzies is spelled with an N, an A, M-A-C-K. Liv's last name is
MC?
M-C-K. Yeah. So you heard it here. Liv is not part of the Mackenzies mentioned in the first Scream movie.
Mere coincidence.
Exactly. So what is that? The opposite of an Easter egg? It's an Easter coal. What do you not want to find?
Coal.
Yeah. There you go.
We're Jewish.
Passover egg.
Yeah,
it's a
Passover
Passover
It's more
egg.
like the Afikomen.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's
Yeah.
also good.
You came looking for an Easter egg and you found an afikoman. If you don't know what that is,
It's a tasteless cracker.
Google it if you can figure out how to spell
Look
it.
up, yeah.
There you go. And then there's Wes Hicks. I assume the first name Wes is a reference to Wes Craven,
That's
who
what I thought.
me
directed the original Scream movie.
He also made a lot of other stuff.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Did he make They Live?
I don't
Am I
think
thinking
so.
of someone else?
I don't think so.
You know at the like way end when it says for Wes, do you
Yeah.
think there were people in the theater confused thinking it was for
They
the
thought-
character in the movie?
I thought for Wes Hicks. Well, he is the son of Judy Hicks, who was the deputy to Dewey Riley back when he was the sheriff in Scream 4. And I believe she's the only carryover from the new cast of Scream 4. Because that came out 10 years after Scream 3.
Did I see that with you? I feel
Possibly.
like I saw it, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I barely
anything.
remember that movie. So we meet the friend group. They discuss the recent killings. We see Vince Schneider, where Chad is like, oh, that's the dude you hooked up with, last summer. He's basically stalking her now. Any thoughts on this introduction scene?
Yeah,
I need a little more context. Like,
it was a good way to meet all the characters, get to know their personalities, and yeah. I
Where
don't
did
know.
they all-
They already started making
where did the
jokes.
scene happen?
This is in the high school, like
the table outside.
Yeah,
Remember? And then the dude pulled up with his car and started like gesturing at what was her name?
That I remember. Yeah.
yeah. I remember Vince showed up, and Liv was like, "Oh, he's been Instagram stalking me lately."
Yeah.
And I will say this: I thought that Chad was, for a high school student, surprisingly cool about that, because he's talking to his girlfriend, and he's like, "Oh, that's the dude you hooked up with, right?"
That's very mature of him.
Yeah, which I figured in high school you probably would be a little bit more jealous and that kind of thing. There was a lot of speculation. So Vince Schneider is Stu's nephew. Stu was the other killer in the first Scream movie, Billy and Stu. There was a lot of speculation that Stu would return in this movie because he died in the first one, but people thought maybe he somehow survived. And apparently for Scream 3, the original plan was that he would come back and reveal that he was the mastermind behind the entire trilogy. But we didn't get Stu. We got Vince, Stu's nephew. Then we see Sam and Richie on their way back to Woodsboro, California. And this is where we see Richie is like, stab? What's that? Killers in Woodsboro? I've never heard of this. We see the bar, and at the bar, they all point out that Wes could have a motive because the idea is that he has a crush on Tara.
He's the one with the blonde hair.
He's the one with the blonde hair. And they're like, that's right. And they're like, well, Wes, you're probably thinking if I can't have her, no one can. And then they run into Vince at the bar. They have a little scuffle. He goes outside to urinate. And then he's the first.
Oh, that guy. Okay, yeah, I remember him.
He's the first true victim.
yeah.
Hold on.
of
Who
Ghostface.
are you saying was boyfriend?
He's the one with the
girlfriend?
cut off sleeves.
I said that. See that now? I see what's going on. You guys had no idea what I was even
Well,
talking
because
about.
I remember two
now I
people
do.
well, there were two people that
I forget
thought
their names.
were brother and sister.
Chad and Mindy are brother and sister.
Okay.
Wait. Who's Mindy again?
Wait.
Mindy's the one that she's the one who goes over all the rules. Like Requel.
Got it.
Yeah.
They're the twins.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Chad's the one who always wears the athletic jacket. And,
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ghostface kills kills Vince, and he's the first true victim of the Ghostface killer in this movie because Tara lived.
He kind of deserved it.
Yeah,
Well, you deserve to die.
yeah.
A little bit. Just a
If
little
you slide into someone's DMs and you're not cool about it,
All right.
in the heightened
bit. You know they're
reality-
in a monogamous situation and you're just sliding in there. For
I will
no,
keep
you
that
know?
in mind.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now let me quickly unslide
Yeah,
into
yeah.
some of these.
How do I
Climb out.
Well, at the hospital, we find out there's a little twist here that Sam, Tara's older sister, is on antipsychotics and has hallucinations of Billy Loomis, her real father. Now, Adam,
Killer from the first Scream movie.
that's right.
Yes.
One of them.
Yes, that's right. Good job. Does it really work this way? Like, if could you be a little bit crazy to the point where everything about you is like you can carry yourself, except for one little hallucination sometimes, and it's a consistent hallucination.
Look, it's not impossible, but it's very
That's
rare.
all you needed to know.
Very
Not
rare.
impossible. Overall, I thought it was a cool way to bring Billy Loomis back. I did not expect to ever see him again.
Is that the same actor?
Yeah, and I'm assuming there was either they got a different actor and just made them up to look like Billy, or they used some kind of CGI de-aging.
Like to make him younger. Yeah.
Exactly, which would be totally doable because he doesn't do a whole lot. He usually just stands still.
There with all of his stab
He's like,
wounds.
come on, Sam, be like me. Kill him. Usually I hate these things. Like, I just hate how often in TV shows and movies people just hallucinate.
Well, hallucination is used as this like go-to thing in so many TV shows when it's a super rare phenomenon. And even when it happens,
yeah,
it's usually not a very easily to describe thing where it's like, oh no, I'm hallucinating this one specific person saying these specific things to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if it happened as often as it does on TV shows and movies, it would be weird that I haven't hallucinated.
Yeah.
Like anytime somebody dies, the next day you'll be talking to a hallucination of them. So normally I don't love this kind of thing. But I kind of liked it here just because it was a nice way to bring him back.
And it didn't have like a strong impact on the course of events.
Well, so to be honest, I actually, that was one thing that disappointed me about it, because they sort of set up this fear that Sam may follow in Billy's footsteps, but at no point in the movie did I actually have that fear. I feel like they kept saying it. Sam's afraid she's going to be like Billy. Billy keeps being like, come on, just do it. Kill somebody. But I never actually felt it. I feel like they just kept saying it, paying lip service to it. So I didn't think the Billy hallucinations really paid off in any interesting way. But I can't deny the fact that I enjoyed seeing him again. It was kind of fun. Didn't really amount to a whole lot. But she gets attacked by Ghostface, survives the attack, fights him
in the
off.
hospital, right?
Still in the hospital. And then afterward, Judy, the cop, Wes's mother, questions them. And this is where we hear Richie's alibi, where he was like, I was watching Netflix, because he's catching up on the stab movies that he's never seen before. And then this is where Sam confesses to Tara why she ran away. Found her mom's old diary, which revealed that her mom cheated on her dad with Billy Loomis, her real father. And then she told her boyfriend, this is Sam's mom, told her boyfriend that she was pregnant with his baby. That's why they got married. So she kind of tricked him into getting married, even though it was, Billy was the father. Then she confronted her mom about it in front of her dad, who didn't know about any of this. And so he found out her mom cheated on him, and that's why he ran away. So Sam blamed herself for her dad running off. And Tara's pissed at Sam for abandoning her and tells her to get out. Get out of here right now. I don't want to talk to you. So I don't know. Any thoughts on that twist, or just for you?
It probably
would
would have had a bigger impact if I remembered the prior movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a cool idea, and it does set up. I don't think it was completely it didn't go nowhere necessarily, because the whole backstory makes you as the viewer wonder the whole time if she really is crazy, if she's going to do something crazy.
Right. After the hospital scene, I thought it might have just been in her head, and they tried to make us think it might be. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know. I thought maybe there was a chance that she really was the killer at certain points.
Wait, when you say it was just in her head, what do you mean?
When Ghostface kind of tried to attack her in that little break room in the hospital.
That maybe she wasn't really attacked, or you're saying maybe she is.
Well, it was in her head, right, and she's convincing herself that she's not the killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, there's no evidence that he was there or anything.
Right.
Well, was it? I can't remember now.
I mean, there was some
the
chairs
chair was
knocked
flipped over
and stuff. Yeah. Well, Sam and Richie visit Dewey, the now retired sheriff. They ask for his help, and he refuses at first. He's like, I've been stabbed 9 times. I don't need to go through this again. But he does offer some advice. He shares with them some of the rules of this situation. Watch out for the love interest. And I really enjoyed that. Where
it's
he's
like Zombieland.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
double tap and stuff like that.
But I just love where he's telling her to be weary of the love interest right in front of Richie, and he's like, "What are you talking about? I'm great. I'm fine." The killer. I also enjoyed this, where he's like, "The killer is always someone in the friend group." And so then after they leave, he calls Sidney Prescott, I also thought this was funny where he's like, the ghost face killer is back, but don't come back, all right? Stay away.
Yeah.
And then he
Smiley
texts, Gail Weathers,
yeah.
and that's when he does the smiley face.
That was funny.
And I just thought that was funny because they probably wouldn't have even heard about it. It wouldn't have come back. But now he's telling them about it. He's like, but don't come back here, okay? So this whole sequence, I liked the kind of grizzled, world-weary Dewey. You probably don't remember him too well from the old movies, but he was always kind of just, everyone saw him as this hapless kind of loser. So to see him now as this like sage of wisdom was kind of fun, even though he, I think, eventually turns into what he was in the older movies anyway. But I did kind of hate that. So every movie goes through a similar kind of trajectory with the Dewey character. Everyone sees him as a loser, but then he pulls it out in the end and kind of gets his comeuppance. But here, they kind of bring him back to square one again. Like, all of that's been undone. He got married to Gail. That's great, but he's lost her, and now he lives alone in a tractor trailer
Yeah.
or just a trailer, and watches her on the news every morning.
Oh, yeah,
It's just,
yeah.
he's a sad sack.
Yeah.
So I kind of liked him being the grizzled Dewey, but at the same time, I kind of hated just, there's no kind way to say it. I mean, he's a loser.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he could have been with Gail because even she was like, why didn't you say that earlier? Whatever he said.
Right, because he couldn't hack it in New York.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah. Like, he moved to New York with her, and then he just, like, he couldn't take it. So in the middle of the night, he left and came
He
back.
couldn't figure out how the subway worked.
Yeah.
He was just like, I'm done with this.
So, I kind of hated the treatment of him. Like, it felt a lot like, on the Ghostbusters review, Alon, you and I talked about the trope nowadays for these requels. When they bring back the legacy characters, they turn them into sad sacks.
Yeah.
Like Luke Skywalker. And I felt
all
like
right,
they did the
I
same
haven't
thing with
even
Dewey here.
watched the second two of the new Star Wars
Last
trilogy.
Jedi.
But everything I've read about it, every YouTube video I've watched, I'm like personally offended by what they did to the Luke Skywalker character. So I can imagine what they did to the Dewey character maybe is a little sliver of that.
Yeah, so to a far lesser extent, I felt similar with Dewey, even though like it was mixed feelings, like I said, because when he was trying to figure out how to text Gail, like that got laughs in our theater, and I thought that was funny. So when he talks to Sydney, though, she makes a comment kind of like, I'm glad that they have you to protect them with the Ghostface Killer back, and I think that's part of what sort of motivates him to get up and actually help them out. So he joins Richie and Sam to help with this whole situation. And then they bring the friend group together and basically announce a few things. Sam confesses that she's Billy's daughter and points out one of you guys is the killer.
Here's a question. Mm-hmm. If you really believed that, wouldn't you just say, all right, every single one of us will now just live in one single isolated room for the next week? And if there's no kills in the next week and we can verify that we've all stayed within the confines of our room, then we know for a fact one of you is the killer.
Well, if they would need 24/7 cameras on each other too, because
iPhone.
they could still leave
FaceTime.
and kill the other people, unless there's evidence they're not moving.
Zoom.
There you go. So a lot of you get at one of my criticisms of the movie, which is I think one of the joys of the Scream franchise, at least in theory, is you have characters who essentially know they're in a horror movie.
Yeah.
So they can avoid doing all the things that always bugs you
Right.
that characters do in horror movies.
Like splitting up.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It would have been a great opportunity for them to purposely do the right thing, and then some surprise happens and they accept the wrong
movies
decision.
are a lot more fun when the main characters make the same decisions you personally would make.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you start to turn on the character, it's like, well, this person is just not acting human. They're doing really dumb things. And at no point do I truly buy that they're suspicious of each other. It's always kind of played for laughs.
Yeah.
And maybe you could argue they don't really believe it, but I feel like the movie is saying they genuinely believe one of them is the killer. And I can laugh. I like comedy. But I'm not a big fan of comedies because they usually take place in a sort of alternate reality that exists by the rules of a comedy where people don't act like people. And sometimes this movie steps into that world.
Yeah, well, this movie felt like they're aware they're in a movie, when I would have liked it if they were aware how similar their situation was to the fictional movie in this movie, instead of acting like they knew they were actually in a movie.
Right. Or realizing that whoever the killer is clearly has an affinity for the stab movies and is playing by the rules of a horror movie.
Yeah, like they could still crack jokes and stuff, because I think anyone in an uncomfortable situation copes like that. But they definitely didn't really act like they were taking it that seriously.
Well, like, okay, killing is one of the worst things one human can do to another human. So if I believed either of you two had actually killed someone, my behavior would be really different around you guys.
Oh, yeah. It wouldn't be like, I think you're the killer.
Yeah. But like maybe though.
Yeah.
Now there is this whole sequence where they bring the friends together. There was another kind of laugh out loud moment here where Wes is like, they're kind of accusing each other. And then Wes, the blonde kid,
I know,
says to Dewey, like, maybe you're the killer. You got stabbed 1 billion times, got dumped by your famous wife, and then crawled into a bottle. And then Dewey's like, well, maybe you're the killer because that cut really deep.
Oh, yeah.
So that was
funny.
Yeah, that was fun. Again, mixed feelings about Dewey.
It fit the personality that they kind of staged for him with the little emoticon text that he did.
Yeah, exactly.
He's kind of cheesy.
Yeah. So I enjoyed that. And then this is also where we get Mindy. So she explains the whole concept of a requel. And I don't know, did you guys find the scene to just feel like really contrived? Like, a requel? What's that? Well, let me explain it to you.
It was a little on the nose.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it felt in line with the movie.
See, I don't know. For me, for some reason, it felt like a bridge too far when they were like, and everyone complains about a Mary Sue. What's a Mary Sue?
Oh.
You don't want to know.
Yeah.
It felt, there was a few points in this movie where it felt like older person trying to approximate millennials or Gen Z.
Yeah.
And this was one of those moments. I also thought it was funny when she's pointing out how you can't just do traditional remakes anymore. The movies she lists, one of them is Flatliners. And
Never
I'm
heard
like,
of it.
is there anybody in the audience who's like, yeah, Flatliners? Like, how dare they remake that movie? Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
So that's a movie from the 80s, I think, with Kiefer Sutherland,
Yeah.
where it's actually a cool premise, where med students, I think, realize that if they let themselves flatline, like basically induce heart attacks, and then resuscitate themselves, they can temporarily cross over to the other side. And so they start to experiment exploring death.
Yeah.
Now, I take issue with them listing that because I think that movie was technically a requel. Kiefer Sutherland does come back. His character has a different name, but I think we're meant to assume he actually is the same guy from the first movie. So that's all I have to say about that. Anyway, they all sort of agree that Sam is the killer because she's Billy's daughter.
Yeah.
And then she kind of storms off. So, yeah, like I said, that whole thing felt a little contrived to me. Maybe it would have worked better if we hadn't seen so much meta stuff by now. Like if we hadn't just seen Matrix Resurrections, and if this wasn't the 5th Scream movie, like if this was the first time we were seeing it. But I think by this point, I was just kind of over all the meta stuff. Anyway, after that, we get to the sequence where Judy and her son, Wes, both get killed. And like I said at the beginning of this, in this movie, when people get stabbed, like you feel it.
They really get stabbed.
When you get stabbed, like you really get stabbed. When you see the knife slowly going through Wes's neck. This was also the moment where they had all the teases every time Wes opened up a fridge.
Yeah, there were so many of those.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Felt bad for them, but also I felt like we never really got to know the Wes character that much.
Yeah.
So, you know.
He's the one who was in like the varsity jacket, right?
No.
Who am I thinking? Well,
You're thinking of Chad.
Okay, who's Wes again?
He's the one with the blonde hair. Yeah.
Died.
Oh, yeah, the frosted tips.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Frosted tips.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
He didn't really have blonde hair.
No, it was dyed blonde.
Frosted.
Frosted tips. It was weird that the whole movie was dedicated to him.
Yeah.
You know? Then this is where the whole place turns into a crime scene. And then Gale Weathers shows up and reunites with Dewey. He gives her crap. He's like, same old Gail. Can't stay away from a good story. Because she's like a news reporter. So
okay.
she shows up.
She's the one who wasn't Courtney Cox.
She's the one who was Courtney
Oh,
Cox.
okay. Who's the other one?
Sydney
Prescott. Okay.
Sydney Prescott,
She
yeah.
was the main character.
She's the one
of
who
original.
wasn't Courtney Cox.
Technically true.
This is where we find out why Dewey and her split up.
It's a lot of names to remember.
It's a lot of names. And you guys have barely
It's a
seen
lot
the
of
other
history.
ones. We find out why Dewey ran away from New York. Ran away from.
He couldn't hack it.
He couldn't hack it in New York.
What do you think that actually means? Like he couldn't get a job. It was too much commotion. He couldn't
don't
figure
know.
out how the subway worked.
I really wish they said something else. Like maybe he was. So they kind of hint at he couldn't leave this town. And I could see an argument for he's fought Ghostface so many times. He's maybe a little bit traumatized by it. He's afraid that this killer is going to come back like he always does. Someone else is going to put the mask on. So maybe he felt irresponsible leaving. He had to stay, like going down.
It's
with
like
the
his
ship.
personal mission is to deal with this issue. And so if he's staying in some other city halfway across the country, he's shirking responsibility.
But then when duty called, he tried to not get involved. He didn't want to like.
I know that's what I'm saying. I wish they did this. Instead, the reason he left Gale is because he couldn't hack it in New York, which just makes him sound like the Dewey we met at the beginning of Scream, the one that we found out. Wait, maybe there's actually more to this guy. He's actually pretty tough. And when duty calls, all the chips are down. You can count on Dewey.
Your story would have been better. Like
Right.
he was ready. Like he's been preparing for this.
Yeah.
But he wasn't.
He wasn't ready.
Couldn't hack it. Yeah, that's a bit of a throwaway kind of cop out line, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't love that. And this whole thing, to be honest, this whole interaction between Dewey and Gale, it just, again, you guys don't remember this, but it's the exact same thing we've seen in every previous Scream movie. This is the same dynamic. Dewey gets mad at Gale because she's just there for a great story. Then he finds out there's more to her than he thought. She finds out there's more to him than she thought. It's the same thing we've seen over and over. And I feel like I said it already, but this movie tries to have its cake and eat it too, where it can make fun of the cliches, but that doesn't free it from that doesn't mean you can be cliched and just do the same thing over and over and be lazy. So I didn't love that whole dynamic. Anyway, with the cops at this new crime scene, Sam realizes that nobody's watching her sister at the hospital. So she rushes to the hospital, but Richie gets there first, and then Ghostface attacks Richie, and then attacks Tara. And Sam calls, but the killer picks up, and he's like, you got to choose. I'm going to kill Richie, your boyfriend, or I'm going to kill your sister, Tara. And she's like, no, please. But it turns out she's just buying time. She and Dewey get there, and then he shoots Ghostface, and they get out. But Dewey's like, they always get back up. You can't just shoot him once. And I was like, that's true. You got to shoot him in the head. But if I was going to shoot Ghostface in the head, I wouldn't walk right up to him, get within stabbing distance, and then shoot him.
And get distracted by my phone.
Yeah, so this is Dewey's comeuppance.
Technically.
And he's supposed to be the sheriff?
He was the sheriff.
Former
Well,
sheriff?
he was asked to retire.
But he certainly learned, when you're going to shoot someone, you don't hold the gun in, grabbing distance of them.
Right.
The whole point of a gun is that it can reach across distances in a fraction of a second.
Well, but you got to do a point blank to really make sure they're dead.
If this were the real Dewey that had gone through this 4 times,
He wouldn't have made that mistake.
Yeah, he would have. This is what he would have done. He would have shot Ghostface a few more times, took a couple more steps, shot again, took a couple more steps, and then shot Ghostface in the head. And then I would have forgiven him. But basically,
And kicked him a few times.
Right. Instead, he walks right up to the killer, pulls up his gun, then gets a phone call, gets distracted, and then Scream grabs his knife.
To be fair,
kills him.
if Gale didn't call and distract him, he probably would have pulled the trigger before Ghostface got him.
Right. But he should never have put
technically,
himself.
Gale killed him.
Right. Which she'll never know.
Yeah.
You
Thank
know.
God.
Yeah, I know. Thank God.
By the way, the whole bulletproof vest thing, I knew it immediately.
Oh, did they show
Yeah.
explicitly?
They showed him
showed,
at
like,
some
the
point.
five
He
bullets.
opens it up and you see the bullets are just kind of embedded in.
I
his
will
vest.
say though, in this movie, you don't need a bulletproof vest because.
Apparently having a hole in your abdominal cavity is like just like you just need a Band-Aid and you're fine.
Yeah, this is what I've learned.
You definitely don't need emergency surgery.
If you get stabbed or shot, as long as it's in the stomach, like you're fine. You might have like a
Yeah.
limp, but you're fine.
So like, I have some medical experience.
Right.
Pretty much every person in the final scene of the movie needed what's called an X-lap, an exploratory laparotomy. Where you got to go rush into the OR, have your abdomen just sliced open so that they can check for organ damage.
That sounds
And
like
they're
a
just
better
sitting
movie.
around like with their blankets drinking cocoa. Like,
It's
man, that was tough.
It's funny how often your expertise is valuable on
Yeah, I know.
podcast too.
So if this movie were medically accurate, every other scene would have been like, get this person an exploratory laparotomy.
Well,
stat.
most of them would
Yes.
probably be dead the amount of time it took for
Yeah.
anyone to even find them.
True,
Yeah.
but the people who were just sitting around like, "Ooh, that was close," like they all should have been in surgery at the time.
Right. So Dewey almost survived because he got stabbed here, and then Ghostface like pulled up.
Yeah,
And it's
he like carved him.
Once he
open.
got
both
up to
sides.
here, once he
I actually
crossed,
felt like they could have shown more of that.
yeah,
It shows the organs
I
spill
thought they
out
were
a
going to
little bit.
really cut him in half, like at a certain point.
Yeah,
But,
I do think they pretty much eviscerated him.
Yeah, I mean that's what you have to do.
You like
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, to wrap it all up, that whole sequence, pathetic is what I'd say.
Yeah. Well, also,
Yeah.
it would have been nice if he had some redeeming quality there. Like literally,
I
he
know.
went back for literally no reason.
Well, okay, yeah, that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. His
He
one,
did save them.
he saved Tara.
Yeah.
They even say it later. He's like, Courtney Cox is like, Dewey never should have gotten involved. It was my fault. And they were like, well, if he hadn't, my sister would be dead.
Right, but you agree, like they're in the elevator or whatever.
No,
ready
no,
to
it
go
was
down.
pointless,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then
So
he goes back.
he
It's like I
accomplished
wish he
nothing.
went back for some. Like I wish he did. Like maybe if he like bought them time to get away or something.
Right.
You know.
If I were like a legacy fan of the series or someone who liked the Dewey character, that scene would have upset me.
Yeah. And it did upset me.
Yeah.
So-
I didn't know him too well, so like, it bothered me just because I was like, "Why are you being stupid?"
Yeah.
But if I actually cared about that character like decades ago, that would have bugged me a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have been fine. So it's happened in a couple of previous Scream movies where it looks like he gets killed. And then at the end of the movie, you see him like being wheeled into an ambulance, which they do in every Scream movie. This
Yeah.
one too, like you'd think Chad and Mindy are dead,
Yeah.
and you see them getting wheeled into an ambulance, but they show you a body bag in the next scene.
Yeah.
So I think he's dead.
I know. I think the body bag wriggled a
Yeah,
little
Honestly,
bit. At
if
the
I
last
were
second.
him, I would want to fake my death so that way Ghostface doesn't know I'm still alive. I would
Yeah.
just find some
Well,
secluded place.
Knowing the Dewey of this movie, he would have the luck of like he's alive in the body bag. Like, get me out of here!
Yeah.
I'm
And
still
then he
alive.
suffocates
I
in
need
the body
a
bag.
I need a Lister. What did you call it? An exploratory.
exploratory
I need
laparotomy.
an exploratory laparotomy. So this is where Sydney comes back because she hears about Dewey's death. She reunites with Gail. At the same time, Sam and Tara reunite. And Sam finally admits the real reason she ran. She was afraid that she would turn out like Billy, and she wanted to protect Tara. But the two of them are friends again and decide they're going to do what nobody does in horror movies. They're going to get the F out of this town.
I like that.
Me too.
Because, I mean, in every one of these movies, this is exactly what you think. It's just like, get the hell out of there.
This was the one part where I felt like they were truly acting like, we're in a horror movie. I'm not going to do the dumb stuff people normally do. So I enjoyed that. Then Sydney and Gail try and get them to stay because Sydney wants to get the killer. She's got kids now. She doesn't want Ghostface running around. But of course, Sam and Tara are like, hell no, we're getting the hell out of here. But Sydney put the tracker on their car. So kind of along the same lines is what I said about this movie overall, where I thought it was solid, but didn't really do anything new. Same feelings about Sydney and Gail. Liked seeing them again. It was, just cool to see characters that I enjoyed from the older movies, but just didn't really do anything new with them. Like Sydney is pretty much the same old Sydney. It didn't even feel like she really learned all that much. I mean, she definitely did. She has a gun. She's protecting herself.
Well, she's Sidney Prescott.
Of course she has a gun.
Exactly. But it seems like that's it. She just got a gun. When she eventually gets to the house, it's not like, okay, we're all safe now that Sydney's here. It just didn't feel like she changed all that much. Versus you look at like the recent Terminator or recent Halloween, where Sarah Connor and Laurie Strode felt like they were truly affected by the previous entries in the franchise. They're somewhat traumatized. They've kind of become these, badass characters that have trained themselves. Now, I don't necessarily want to see the same thing again. It would get boring. But what do you do instead of that? It just felt like nothing. She's just kind of moved on with her life. And I don't know, maybe that's fine. But in a movie where there wasn't a whole lot else that was new, it just felt like here's more of, the same stuff you've already seen. So not a whole lot else to say about that. But anyway, Richie, Sam, and Tara drive off, but Tara doesn't have her inhaler. So they have to go.
I knew something was afoot.
Once she realized she didn't have the inhaler,
Yeah.
You felt like that was foul play?
There was foul play somewhere. I didn't know if she did that on her own, like she's actually the killer and that's why she did. At that point, I didn't know, but I knew either someone hid it or took it away intentionally, or she herself was doing
Adam, are you? I don't know anything about inhalers really. Like, are you able to go to like a pharmacy and just pick up some over-the-counter thing?
No, technically, if it's like albuterol, which is probably what she needed, that would be a prescription.
So if you,
I don't really understand why it should be prescribed, but it is
real.
Even
if you need something prescription, like they need a prescription for it, could you go to a pharmacy and be like, "This is an emergency"?
So I've heard of cases of people actually dying in that situation because the person wouldn't violate the law in order to help them.
So that was legit then. Okay. That was a good plot point.
It works, yeah.
Yeah, and I was happy when we found out it was foul play.
I think that they could have established earlier on that she had some kind of severe asthma.
Well, they showed it, and I assumed it was basically foreshadowing.
It was Chekhov's inhaler.
When did they show that?
It might have been the opening scene.
I just missed it then. I just missed it.
We definitely see her with an inhaler earlier in the movie.
Fair.
Do you apologize?
I apologize to
whoever made this movie.
Whoever it is that is responsible for this.
Which I'll look up. I forget their names, but I'll look up the writer and directors.
I mean, it was pretty good. It was a pretty good movie overall.
Put that right here.
So
Were they the same ones who made Ready or Not? Which neither of you saw that, right?
Ready or Not. What was that?
That was a recent horror comedy again, where that's the one where the girl's getting married into the rich family.
No, I saw that. We saw that. Yeah.
Okay.
That was good.
I got tired and went to bed.
Establishing a theme here. No, I like that movie.
Yes, I thought they were the perfect choice for this movie.
That actually made sense because it was a little bit slapstick, a little bit satirical, but there were true horror elements to it. So I think it fits well with Scream.
So they need to get Tara an inhaler, and she left one at Amber's house.
Yeah.
So they go over there, and she's having a party as a memorial for Wes. This was another moment that to me felt like adults trying to write for kids. It reminded me of Dexter New Blood, because in that movie, in that show too, there was a tragedy in school, and so they all throw a party. And I don't know, I mean, maybe that's how kids would react, right?
Look, when I was in high school,
there
was a student who suffered a very unfortunate fate. Mm-hmm. And there was never a single conversation about throwing a party as a result.
Adam wasn't invited.
Yeah, that's all. That's really what it was. I just convinced myself there was no party.
There were no parties in high school. This is totally unrealistic.
Also, one thing that was unrealistic was Amber didn't seem like the type to throw a party.
Well, we find out that she's the killer. So maybe she is doing stuff a little bit out of character. Like she was luring people into a death trap. I mean, who knows?
Anyway, as soon as who's the guy killer?
Richie.
As soon as Richie showed up and started clearing everyone out of the house, I was like, I'm suspicious of this guy because they're just stopping here for the inhaler. That doesn't mean the whole party has to end. He wants everyone out for some reason.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
His character.
It turns out his reason was because he's a killer.
Yeah.
So a perfectly legitimate reason for him.
Yeah.
Which is what he told them. He was like, this place has just become a death trap, so you should all leave.
He was right.
And he was right. There's a few funny moments in this whole party sequence. There's Amber and Mindy in the basement where Mindy pretends to be the killer.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, gotcha. You see, that's why I didn't go to the basement alone. And Amber's like, yeah, but you also shouldn't follow someone into the basement because maybe I'm the killer. And, you know, ha, ha, ha. And then they all leave the basement.
If they were really taking the idea serious, I brought this up before, but if you were really serious about the idea that someone in your friend group is the killer, like, there's so many other things you could do to prevent any further death.
And it's not even like if you truly believed that one person in the friend group is a killer, that friend group has gotten a little smaller because at least one of the people is dead. So like the odds are pretty high, especially for Mindy because she knows the stab movies, so she should suspect there are two killers. So for her, the odds are doubled, but she's just like, it's all a big joke.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you also would think that some of the people in the friend group would suspect Richie because he's the new guy that none of them know.
Right.
But nobody suspected him.
Yep. But by this point in the movie, I kind of accepted that's the route we're going. You know, it's a little bit, we're in the comedy world.
Plus, they're kids. They're going to be dumb.
Yeah. I mean, to me, this movie was more comedy than horror. Like, a lot more.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I mean, we were talking about this after the movie where it's this weird line, you know, what's horror and what's suspense. Like, I definitely felt a lot of suspense. I never felt horrified the way I did when I was watching like Hereditary.
I almost
or
feel like
something.
slasher is a different genre than horror.
Yeah. Well, so I was thinking about this. Why is Halloween, Friday the 13th, or Scream horror versus suspense? Like, what makes this different from Jason Bourne?
There's supernatural elements.
Well, Scream, no supernatural elements. Halloween, debatable if there are supernatural elements. But I think the difference is when you leave Jason Bourne, a Bourne movie, you're not afraid that an assassin's going to jump out from around a corner.
Right. It doesn't invade normal everyday scenarios.
Right. But after a Scream movie, you might, next time you take a shower, be scared that someone's going to sneak up on you and stab you.
Yeah, I would say a movie like Scream is more suspense than like Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street or anything, because with this, you're literally wondering who the killer is. With those, you're not wondering who the killer is. You're just wondering
It's Freddy
who's going
or
to die
Jason,
and how.
Right. There's a
Which
mystery
is not
element.
as suspenseful because you're expecting.
Yeah.
Part of the draw of those movies is just to see the gore and like the bloodshed.
Right. Which I would say is true for Scream too. There was definitely an element of I wonder how he's going to kill this next person.
They stab so fast in those movies.
I almost feel like movies that the allure is gore is almost even different than horror. Because it's like it's almost like shock something.
Yeah.
Alon has a very large library of those types of films.
They're totally legitimate films. And, there's also the funny moment
Got
where
them on LimeWire.
Yeah.
what?
What?
LimeWire.
LimeWire. What is this? 1997?
No.
So Chad tells his girlfriend. There's a funny moment where he's talking to Liv, and he's like, "I'm like 90% sure you wanted to kill her because she wants to bring him upstairs." I thought that once you accept that this is the world we're in, where we're not really taking it too seriously, I found that stuff funny.
Yeah.
Where they were joking around about who really is the killer. I kind of trust you, but not
Liv
totally.
died, right?
Yeah.
It
That's
felt
ironic.
legitimate in terms of this is the way friends would joke about this stuff that they were uncomfortable about to each other.
And you can also always use the excuse at this point. They're all high, drunk. They're all on goofballs.
You got that though, right?
They're all
Kind of
smoking
ironic.
doobies.
Hold on. What's
Adam, kind of ironic, right?
what's
Her
kind of
name
ironic?
is Liv.
Oh, and she dies.
She dies.
Okay, thank you.
That was good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that was good.
So hard to say.
So she goes outside. She leaves because she's so offended that Chad thinks she's a killer. Chad goes outside to follow her, and then she finally shares her location with him. Which earlier in the movie, he's like, "We should share our location with each other." He follows it, but really, it's the killer luring him. Stabs him a bunch of times. And then Chad tries to use his phone, but it's all smeared in blood. so it
I
won't
like
work.
that was a really nice touch,
One of the
'cause
most relatable parts
yeah.
of the movie.
Yeah, because I like to use my phone in the shower.
Yeah, that's why.
I like to watch YouTube while I'm in the shower, and it's like if there's even just one drop of water on the screen, I cannot change the video I'm watching.
Exactly. I saw the look on your face.
Well, that's the only place I thought that might occur, but I wasn't 100% sure that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, Chad seemingly gets killed, but like we already mentioned, he lives at the end of the movie, we find out. Ironic. His girlfriend's name is Liv.
That's not
and he
ironic.
lived. I don't know. So anyway, so Sam, Richie, and Tara arrive. They get everybody to leave the house, like we already mentioned. I found it weird, by the way. After everyone leaves, Richie's like, "I'm gonna go grab a beer." Like, he should have been suspect number one at that point. Because if you're in a crisis situation, a killer's after you. Richie's the one pushing for, we need to get out of town stat. He's like, yeah, while I'm here, I might as well grab.
I found that, like, whether he was a killer or not, that was just really weird. Because if you are the killer, you would know not to make yourself suspicious like that.
Right.
At the moment, I thought that was very
Richie
odd.
was one of the killers, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just It's so hard to remember. There's so many names.
Just no matter what, that was just a weird action.
Yeah,
on his part.
very odd move, I thought. And then Mindy starts to suspect Chad's girlfriend, Liv, of being the killer because she's like, where's Chad? And Mindy's like, well, last time I saw him, he was going to look for you. And then Liv starts playing into it where she's like, maybe I am the killer. That whole thing.
She wasn't the killer.
No,
right, it was the other
Amber, the black hair girl.
Yeah.
I think maybe I might
Liv
have
had like dyed hair. Her like half of her hair was dyed.
right, and she had this makeup on her eyelids that was like completely white.
Yeah,
And so
I remember
it looked
that,
kind of creepy at certain
Yeah,
angles.
I thought
actually.
she
Well,
was the
way
killer.
she
It
was
almost
talking
looked
was
like,
very
yeah.
aggressive and killer believable.
Right, and when she was looking away from Mindy and her eyes were closed, I thought they were open, but we were just seeing the white of her eyes. So I thought her eyes had rolled back into her head, and she was having some kind of psychotic break.
Oh, you do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. But then it turns out that she was just blinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to point out, I guess we've kind of mentioned this so many times, but I really wish this movie...
Sorry, back up a little bit. When he said he was going to get a beer, is that literally what he was doing, or was he up to something at that point? I forget.
He might have been going to just try and meet with Amber in private, and that might have been his excuse. I can't remember at this point. But like I was saying before, part of what I wanted to like about this movie is you've got characters that know what you should not do in a horror movie, and I want to see them avoid it. I thought the most egregious example of not doing that was Chad when he went outside.
Yeah.
After
That was
Liv.
a little bit hard to swallow.
Yeah.
Well, if your girlfriend leaves, I mean, you gotta look out for her, right? What are you gonna do?
Yeah, but I don't know if I would do it by walking just into the void.
I would
of
get
night.
someone to go with me.
Get someone to go with me. Try calling her. I think you probably did try calling her and she didn't answer. I don't know. At that point, I'd cut my losses.
I'd be like,
I'm sorry.
we weren't right for each other.
He was
Anyways.
probably a serial killer.
Considering she wasn't the killer, she was a very aggressive person.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, how would you feel if someone accused you of being a killer? Wouldn't that make you aggressive?
I definitely wouldn't say maybe I am the killer.
Yeah, in a situation where we legitimately suspect one of us is a killer, I would not make any jokes about being the
I would
killer.
just be like, all right, I'm sharing my location with you. You can track me at all times. I will record everything I do 24/7.
no matter what.
I will
I'm
lock
doing.
myself into a cell just to prove that I'm not the killer.
That sounds like I don't want to give spoilers. An anime that we watched.
Okay,
was
yeah.
awesome. Do
It
you know
also
what
sounds. I do know what you're talking
Alright,
about.
cool.
It also sounds like Final Destination, where he wants to avoid getting
yeah.
killed, so he like, puts on oven mitts.
I love that movie, by the way. The first Final Destination.
It's getting rebooted. Well, I don't know if it's a reboot or a
Requel.
requel, but Mark Webb. No, not Mark Webb. I'm thinking of Amazing Spider-Man. Whoever made the
Webb.
Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, he is in charge of the new Final Destination. Which, could be.
Interesting.
I would see this.
Yeah.
I like the feeling of inevitability. Whether it's like a zombie movie or Final Destination, the feeling of just like,
It Follows.
yeah, this
It's gonna
evil
come for you.
force will not stop no matter what you do.
Yeah.
That makes for good horror.
Yeah, I agree with that. Terminator.
Yeah.
Sydney and Gail look at Sam's location and call her to let her know you're in Billy Loomis's old home. You got to get out of there.
I like the way it kind of like zoomed out after that and like showed the house.
Yeah.
It was just nice cinematography right there.
It was great. Yeah, nice.
Thank you.
Nice.
I mean, it's not that complicated a word.
And then we get into the third act of the movie. So you've got Mindy watching the stab movie where her uncle is getting killed because he's watching a movie or gets stabbed.
Oh, that was funny.
He's watching a movie and he's like, "What are you doing? Turn around, the killer's right behind you."
Yeah.
And then she's saying to Randy, "Turn around, the killer's right behind you." Meanwhile, the killer in real life is right behind her.
So that was an example of them doing the meta thing pretty effectively.
Yeah, it was suspenseful and also funny at the same time. That was a lot of fun. So she gets attacked. She gets stabbed. But then Sam finds her with the killer and kind of fends him off. And like we said, we find out later that Mindy survived the attack.
Where was she for the rest of the movie until the way end?
Well, that's what happens in the Scream movies. You get stabbed, you disappear, and then you find out you're alive.
It's just crazy that like she was completely left alone that entire time.
Who's Mindy?
She's the one that explained the concept of the requel.
She's the twin sister.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
For everyone,
So she survives?
Yeah.
Okay.
Her and
her
Chad
brother.
survived. Yeah.
They both survived?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see him in the ambulance at the end, and she's somewhere. But
They really don't know how to stab people.
No. Well, again, if you get stabbed here, you're fine.
Apparently you're fine. It's
Maybe
just nothing.
The two
like a paper
killers
cut.
know the anatomy, and they know exactly where to stab, so it's not fatal. You didn't see exactly where they were stabbed.
Yeah, but what incentive do they have for it to not be fatal?
So there could be another a sequel to the Requel.
But there's no shortage of people that you can
But
kill.
listen, they knew what they were doing because now we're probably going to get a sequel with the same characters.
And I will watch it.
Maybe if it gets above a 70% Rotten Tomatoes.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'll probably see this one tomorrow.
Or if you're doing a podcast about it, I'll watch it.
There you go.
So I can participate.
I feel like this is the kind of movie where even if it gets a really bad score, it might still be entertaining.
Yeah, well, Scream 3 was pretty poorly received, but I enjoy the movie.
Listen, like I this is always my example recently, but Venom 2, I would not by any means call that a good movie, but I was entertained the entire time.
But I will say
was
that
a good
movie was not poorly received.
Really?
It should have been.
It's actually not a great.
What'd it get?
Here, I'm gonna look it up right now.
I mean, it wasn't good.
Venom, Let There
Objectively.
Be Carnage, Rotten Tomatoes. It's got 58%.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, it's true. That's fair.
Still,
I
it's
say,
a little
like-
higher than it should get.
Like for me,
should have gotten like a 40.
I feel like for us, like most movies, like absolute minimum is a 60. Like absolute minimum for us to go see it in theaters. And it's got to be something that like it's just like I don't know. Like certain movies, even if it has a 60, we'll go see it just
If
'cause
it has
we have
enough
to.
like historical context or something like that.
Like if Spider-Man had a 60, we'd probably still go see
Right.
it.
But I do want to say, so some people are probably going to be like, oh, so the critics, you just agree with whatever they say?
No.
No, definitely not. I would
I
say,
usually don't agree with them.
yeah. So I would just say that if a movie has below a 60%, it's usually a pretty good indication we're probably not going to like it, but there are definitely exceptions.
For
it's
sure.
just a good, like, first filter for
There's
anyone,
enough content out there that if you need some kind of filter to just decide I'm not going to bother with these things, it's hard to go wrong with that.
I mean,
Exactly.
You could go wrong, but it's not a guarantee.
in almost
Right.
every instance, I trust the audience score way more than the critic
Agreed,
score.
yeah.
But
Right.
sometimes they're both wrong.
Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. One of my favorite movies of
Love
all
that
time.
movie.
I think it has like a 40% on
Yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes or something. So, Alon, I disagree with you. And I make up my own opinion about movies. I don't just listen blindly to the critics or the audience score for that matter. There you go.
Sorry.
So all the characters come together. They start arguing. Liv is like, I am not the killer. And Amber's like, I know. And then shoots Liv in the head. And she
Because
dies.
she's the killer.
Because Amber's the killer.
Yeah.
You think that's why she shot her?
Coincidence.
They all run. Richie gets Sam to suspect that maybe her own sister is the killer, the one that they have tied up upstairs. And then Sydney and Gail arrive. They find Amber coming out of the house screaming for help, but they can tell she's faking it. But it doesn't matter because Amber still manages to shoot Gail in the stomach. Thank God she was only shot in the stomach.
Stomach, there's nothing important there.
Exactly. There's no organs in the human body below, like between the waist and the chest.
Once her ribs stop, it's just empty space. There's really
Exactly.
nothing going on there.
You got a couple kidneys or whatever.
Let's
So
grow back.
Then Sydney goes in. I'm curious, Alon, because I feel like you have a lot of thoughts about tactics.
Yeah.
What did you think of Sydney's tactic? She walked into the house and she's like, I'm not going to fall for somebody sneaking up on me. So she announces,
What do you think?
so she announces, if you're the killer, or even if you're not the
Oh,
killer,
okay, yeah.
I don't care. You have to show yourself in the next 5 seconds. And then she just walks around and just shoots every door. Which I've never seen that before. I enjoyed
respect
that.
I respect that.
So, yeah, I mean, like, it's tough because on one hand, I like it and that's smart. That's smart on her side of things. But the problem is, what if the person that's hiding doesn't know who to trust?
Yeah.
So it's like if someone like knocks on your door and yells, "Police, open up," and you don't know for sure it's the police. You know, what
But
do
if
you
they're
do?
really police, they have to tell you.
Oh yeah, that's true. And you're not allowed to claim to be police. That's against the law. Nobody,
That
breaks
was
the law.
Richie's excuse. She's like, "Why didn't you come out?" He's like, "I don't know. You were shooting everything."
Yeah.
Which I thought was, I see both sides.
It's
of
a
it.
legit excuse.
Like honestly,
Yeah.
But like honestly, like if you've gone through what she went through, like for like 5 movies or whatever, it's a good tactic.
Yeah,
Makes
I
sense.
don't blame her for being like no nonsense. Like
she's also
I will
not
shoot
personally
every
attached to
single
these
door.
people.
Worst case, I kill an innocent person, but I'm willing to take that risk.
Yeah, you
They
kill
pr-
Richie. Who
And
cares?
they probably would have died anyway.
Exactly, because there's a
Yeah.
killer afoot.
On the loose.
Exactly. So Sydney goes in, starts shooting everything, and then in all the struggling, we find out there are 2 killers, Amber and Richie. And we find out the motivation. So Richie is basically a fanboy of all the Stab movies. And the franchise has gone off the rails. The last Stab movie wasn't even connected to the previous ones. It was basically like Ghostbusters 2016, a whole new continuity.
Boo.
I never
didn't
saw
see
it,
it?
so for all I know, it was good.
I didn't see it.
It might be a great movie.
Right.
I'm speaking from the perspective of Richie.
Well, I saw the Rotten Tomatoes score, so
Audience and critic.
Richie and Amber, mainly Richie, it seems like, and he kind of got Amber to go along with it. He wants to give the creators fresh material for a new Stab movie. So, like the original, it can be based on a true story and bring back some of the old characters. Plus, they have the perfect plot because they've got Sam here, and they could set up Sam, Billy's daughter, as the new killer. So they're trying to frame her up as the killer. And by the way, her name is Sam. Billy Loomis. Samuel Loomis was the doctor for Michael Myers in the old Halloween movies.
Ah.
And in Halloween 6, The Curse of Monkey Myers. Wow, how has that not been done? Monkey Myers. The Curse of Michael Myers. The original ending of the movie.
I hope somebody watching this knows what that is.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, what is that?
Curse of
Curse of Monkey Island.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking that.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Didn't you just say it?
I said what was the name of the movie was The Curse of Michael Myers. That's probably why I said Curse of Monkey Island I was thinking of. But
What a great game.
so in that movie, it became supernatural where there was an actual curse that made Michael kill people. The original ending of the movie was that the curse transferred to Samuel Loomis. So this is basically that.
So, like, the Halloween movies are a precursor to the Scream movies.
Exactly. I don't know. What did you think of the reveal? Like who was in terms of who the killer was and the whole motivation.
Overall, I liked it. I did not predict that those 2 were the killers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you gave me enough time to sit down and with a list of all the characters, maybe I would have come up with it. But I thought the reveal was pretty good. The whole we're such big fans of the series and we're trying to create more material was a little bit hard to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And at times during their speeches about the whole thing, it felt a little too on the nose. But at the same time, it kind of fit the spirit of the whole movie. So I think maybe I need a little more time to process it, but I don't dislike it.
I liked it, but at the same time, I wonder if I would have liked it more if they went the opposite direction, where instead of Richie playing like this naive guy that doesn't know anything about the movies, if he was the one leading everything, being like, I'm a huge fan of the movies, like I can tell you, we gotta prepare. Like they always do this. Like it almost would have made him less suspicious, where he's like telling them, look, I'm telling you, like we can't go there, we can't do this because I've seen all the movies.
Yeah, maybe they could have misled us a little more before it.
Well, I thought they did a decent job of misleading us. He was the one who was like, despite the fact that she needs the inhaler, no way we're going back. We need to get out of here.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought they did it.
And they did make it seem like when he was watching the Stab movies in the hospital room, I believed that he'd never seen them before.
Yeah. I don't know.
Turns out he just really loves them.
Yeah.
No, I liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. Part of me almost feels the opposite, where there may have been really nothing to indicate that they're the killer. You couldn't have guessed it. And I'm trying to think back to the original Scream movie, if it was also like that, where it was kind of just somebody's going to be the killer, but there's no real way to figure it out ahead of time. So I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but it did strike me as really anybody could have been the killer, and anybody could have had that motivation. It could have been any of the characters. It did also give me a little bit of that feeling of, and again, maybe this is just because I'm a little raw off of Matrix Resurrections, but it does feel a little bit like these Hollywood movies want to be meta and point stuff out without having anything to say about it. Like, you internet people, you all want us to do a requel. You want the old stuff back, but you don't want anything too new. And here you go. But they don't have anything to say about it. Like, do you have a problem with that? Are you saying things should be done differently? What is wrong with that? So it feels like commentary in the sense that you're pointing it out, but you're not really saying anything about
like, what's
it.
the actual point?
Exactly.
I mean, my problem is when they give us a requel or soft reboot when we want a true sequel, like with Star Wars.
Right. Where, the main characters kind of take a back seat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think the original Scream, it wasn't necessarily commenting on the horror genre and telling us all that much. It wasn't bringing a ton of new insights, but there was so much fun in playing with audience expectations because they know that we know slasher movies, so they played with that. And then 2, you get the fun of the characters acknowledging it and, trying to survive playing by those rules. So I guess kind of like what I've been saying about everything, I didn't hate it. I liked it, but it didn't go the extra mile in any way. It wasn't amazing or great or anything like that. So
considering it was the first Scream movie I've seen in full in theaters that I can remember, it was good enough that I imagine the younger generation seeing this for the first time similarly, or seeing their first exposure to Scream, will be interested in the next Scream movie that comes out.
Right.
So in a sense, it's sort of a refresher for a new generation.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I want to talk to you about what would you do in a Scream sequel.
I was just thinking that.
But let's get back to that in a second. Just to wrap up, basically, Sydney and Gail team up to kill Amber by shooting her, and then incidentally she gets lit on fire by the stove.
Oh, yeah.
She accidentally turns it on.
That seemed like really kind of cumbersome.
She also completely lit up.
I know. It's like, was she coated
really
in
fast.
lighter fluid?
Well, she probably greased herself up, so she'd be hard to catch.
Like from Family Guy.
Yeah, so
greased up deaf guy. You're never gonna catch me. You're wasting your time.
Immediately incinerated. Richie is killed when Billy Loomis in the mirror points out a knife to Sam, and then she grabs it and kills Richie.
Here's a question.
Right through
Yeah.
the
Now,
mouth
I
there.
have very little memory of the true Billy Loomis character. Is that something he would do? Like, he was the OG murderer,
Right.
but would he try to help his spawn?
Well,
survive?
he want in her hallucinations of him, he wants her to be a killer, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense.
But
This would be her
also,
first kill right there.
Billy's motivations weren't anything like Richie's. So I think Billy would probably be annoyed at Richie. Billy had a legitimate reason for being upset with Sidney Prescott. So now I'm going to forget some of the details, but there was something like Sidney's mom somehow got Billy's dad or something in trouble, even though he was innocent. So there was like a personal vendetta.
Personal motive, yeah.
So I think Billy would have been like, this Richie guy's a total poser. He's a jerk. And then also he was a hallucination.
Yeah.
So I think there's any number of reasons he would have helped her out there.
Just checking.
Yeah. And then there's a moment where Amber comes back. She's all burned and everything.
Yeah.
But Tara shoots her in the head.
Like in I don't want to give spoilers, but a certain show where someone gets burned and is walking toward the camera.
Oh, yeah.
That's what that reminded me of for a second.
Yep, I know what you're talking
Yeah.
I mean,
about.
I think I know.
You probably know.
Yeah. Adjust his tie.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And then Sam heads to the hospital with Tara. And she says, though, can we go to a different hospital this time?
Yeah.
That's basically the end. So, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I was thinking about what I want from the next movie.
Right.
I think I know.
Okay, go ahead.
You want me to jump to that?
Yeah.
Okay. I think they can stay in line with the whole meta thing, and I think they should do exactly what we were talking about here. which is acknowledge that, in the last Stab movie, assuming they make a Stab movie of this, which they probably won't because they're trying not to make them famous in this one.
Yeah, that was kind of Gail's closing thing of, I'm going to write another book, but this one's going to be about a great man named Dewey.
I think it would be great if I assume it'll be about the same characters. We'll see, but something where they're like, this time, let's actually do what we're supposed to do instead of just talking about it. And then, that could be like, they could do something more interesting. Like every time we think they're going to do something wrong, they actually do the right thing.
So basically like a sequel with smarter characters.
Yeah. It could be the same characters that learned from their mistakes.
Right.
And like, I want it to just keep happening in the movie where every time you're like, don't do that. They're like, oh, wow, they actually didn't do it. But obviously things still go wrong.
Yeah. A Scream movie, but better.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to do it better.
So I was kind of picturing like a Scream movie, but where instead of there being 2 ghost faces, there's like 50 of them.
Oh,
because these online communities are so huge that basically you end up with a group of people who are all kind of on board with this idea, whatever the idea you want it to be is. And so it's just like no matter how many times you take out Ghostface, there's just another one.
Yeah.
And so maybe they have to defuse the whole idea that's driving them rather than physically defeat them.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. An army of ghost faces. I can picture a horror version, V for Vendetta, where you see everybody wearing the masks.
Yeah.
That's better than what I was thinking.
It would be cool. A scene where the main character is like running away and they're like going house to house trying to find someone to help them. And every time they open the door, there's just another one.
Yeah.
That would be
kind of what
cool.
I'm picturing.
That would be kind of creepy. That could be done really creepy.
I like it.
Yeah.
Trying to think of a good title for that. Something like We All Scream. Like We All Scream for Ice Cream. I was thinking, we've done it all. Scream, we've done 5 Scream movies now. No. Let's go full supernatural. Billy Loomis is back from the dead. Stu is back from the dead. And then they can start, because
Dewey's back from the dead.
Dewey's back from the dead, because all of the slasher movies eventually go that way. Jason eventually gets electrocuted, turns into a zombie. Can't be killed.
They cut him up into like a bunch of little pieces, and he still survives.
And he still comes back. They cut Jason into little pieces, put every piece into a different jar. He started possessing people and killing them.
That happened to me once.
I remember that.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
You were possessed or you were possessing?
I was possessing everyone.
Michael Myers. Curse of Michael Myers. It turns out that he's a member of a cult, or he was the victim of a cult and he's being possessed or whatever. All of the slasher movies do that. So Scream, if it wants to comment on slasher movie tropes and it wants to comment on modern horror movies, we got to bring the supernatural element in. I would be on board for that. I think it would probably piss off a lot of OG fans. But you know what? Like this movie said, you're just a bunch of internet jerks. You don't know what you want. This is what you want.
Always
You're
good
living
to
in the
insult your
past.
audience.
I know. So I think with that, Anna, what do you think about that? Supernatural?
I like that. I mean,
We should
I'm
combine all
I
three.
love supernatural stuff. So
What did you say, Alan?
Combine all 3 ideas.
All right, so smart characters. There's a bunch of screams running around.
Ghost faces.
And then supernatural element. All
Yeah.
right. With that.
So you just piss off every possible audience simultaneously.
All right, with that, you know what, though? It's
What?
the Avengers of the Scream movies. So everybody teams up.
That's true.
So like the character from Scream 4, the character from Scream 5. Jay and Silent Bob showed up in Scream 3.
Wait, really?
In character.
I didn't know that.
They were like going through the set, because in the movie they were filming a stab movie.
Yeah.
So they're at like a Hollywood set, and Jay and Silent Bob jump out and they're like, "What are they doing, yo? Let's smoke some doobies."
I love that.
Yeah. So they could show up. So that would be great.
Yeah. You know, it'd be funny actually.
Yeah.
A Scream crossover with Scary Movie, where it's actually you unite the two and it actually turn it into something genuinely scary. But you got a false sense of security.
I just have a
because
hard time picturing
it's
that.
the Wayans brothers involved.
Well, the Scary Movie was a spoof of Scream, so it's
but it
like,
wasn't scary at all. It was just
no.
But
kind of
even
gross.
Scream isn't very scary. So like neither are like that scary.
I don't like that
I would
idea.
combine
All right,
I was gonna say.
forget about it. Forget about it. I know it's a good idea.
Let us know in the comments which of our ideas would you like to see in the next Scream movie, and it could happen. I've got some connections. So
That's true.
What connections?
I've got some connections. I won't say if they're relevant or not to Scream, but with that, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for watching, and make sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon.
Ding.
We don't have my bell here. We have to get the bell. Hold on, write that down. Also, if you just want to listen to this, you don't want to see us, you can use any podcast app, Downcast, Apple Podcasts. What's the Google one called?
Google Play.
You can use that.
Spotify.
Just search OneTake. We're on Spotify. And if you're listening but not watching and you want to watch,
YouTube.
I'll put the link in the description to the YouTube channel. So with that, thank you for watching or listening.
Yeah.
Wait, and I want to close on with some words of wisdom. Look out for yourself. Arcane.
Oh. That's a good show. We got to
That's a
talk about
great
that
show.
soon.
All right, with that, thank you for watching,
Watching,
and see you on the next One Take.